So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ray Nelson, and I'll read a little about your bio here. So Ray is a nationally recognized motivational speaker, youth developer, and a bold leader within the community. His personal mission is to build relationships and repair communities from the inside out through innovative strategies. In his current role as ministry director for City Life, a ministry model under Youth for Christ in the greater Washington, D.C. area, he recruits, trains, and develops adult leaders to disciple and mentor under-resourced teens. Well, that sounds great, Ray. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here, and let me make sure that sound and everything is on. And let's see.
Looks great.
Right. Okay. Do you see the title slide?
Yep, we do. Do you speak boy? We see it. That's
oh,
great.
You got it. Okay. Thank you. So I have two screens over here, so I'm looking at one. Well, so first of all, thank you so much. It is an honor to be a part of this incredible conversation today around how do we help boys thrive. And I'm so honored to also be a part of the advisory board for the Boys Initiative. And so I just want to say that, and it has been just a great wealth of information and knowledge and resources today. And so I'm honored to be with you guys, and I thank you for this opportunity. So do you speak boy, right? Engaging and understanding youth culture for deeper impact, helping boys thrive. And so as we spend some time together today, I'm hoping that we can really just dialogue together in terms of what does it look like? What do our boys need? How can we create strategies and implement strategies that will help our young men thrive? And so do you speak boy? Here's kind of something I created: the ability to intentionally understand youth culture, the language for deeper impact, engagement, and support of boys that changes their perceptions, perspectives, and outcomes, causing them to thrive. All right, so just a few objectives: discuss the terms resiliency and at risk, identify the strengths, assets youth bring in community transformation, strategize steps to address the barriers to youth-adult collaboration, create unbiased perceptions of young people, and explore the timelines and narratives of inner city young people or inner city youth. This is a quote. In fact, one of our speakers had this quote earlier today, and this is always one as I'm serving young men and coming alongside boys here in Washington, D.C., and in fact in the DMV, which we call that D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. It's kind of one of those quotes that's in the background. It's in the back of your brain as you do this work. And when people often ask me what it is that you do in certain circles, my response is my job is to help young men, young women, primarily today, young boys, to live life to their fullest potential. And so this is one of those verses, those quotes that's always there. So just real quick, I represent in some circles more of a faith-based community. In fact, early 2002, I was in this work because two of my friends in Washington, D.C. were shot and killed. And a month later, an organization by the name of World Vision. I know some people may be familiar with World Vision US programs, one of the largest Christian humanitarian organizations in the world. There was a relationship at my local church that they had with World Vision. And so we were able to connect. And so I started doing youth development work, working in our local middle school and high schools in my neighborhood. And so that was something that was incredible. But this passage of scripture in John chapter number 6, and it's a familiar passage to some. It's kind of the feeding of the 5,000. And because I'm a youth worker, I'm always looking for passages where the young people hanging out. And so in this particular passage, there, Jesus is really testing his disciples, because there's all these people who have now come to the community where Jesus was, come up the hill. And so they're there, and he's like, hey, it's getting late. I'm paraphrasing. It's getting late. Instead of sending these people away, how can we feed them? Right. And then Simon Peter says, his brother Philip says, it'll take a year's wages to provide enough food to feed all these people. In other words, there's not enough money to go to Chipotle and get every single person a bowl or something to eat. And so, but I love this passage because he identifies a young boy who is in this crowd, who had a lunch, and the narrative goes that he took this little boy's lunch and he raises it, he blesses it, and now it's enough to distribute to the masses, right? And so I use that today because as we craft this conversation today, I'm often thinking about what would our communities look like? What would our neighborhoods, what would our school systems, and what would the structures and the strategies look like? Can we create for our young men and our boys such an environment where all they had to do was bring the substance of who they are, to bring what they have, and the community and the environment and everybody comes around them to create opportunities that what's in them, it's enough to feed the masses. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that today in our conversation. And so real quick, we're going to do an activity. Several years ago, World Vision had a partnership with the 40 Development, with the Search Institute. And one of the things that we noticed that these 40 developmental assets, that if young people have 10 or fewer, then it's less likely that they will become productive adults, right? And we know that that's not in every situation, but we looked at this list to try to figure out, okay, what can we do to come alongside our young men, these young boys in the neighborhood. I was also doing some contract work with an organization called Mentoring to Manhood, and I oversaw 3 of their programs in their schools. And so one day I had about 40 boys, and we were in the library of the school, and it was during the time that I lost my dad. And growing up in the inner city, my dad was addicted to drugs and kind of lived that lifestyle. And as a young boy in the community, in the neighborhood, also had a uncle who was also addicted to drugs. And both of these individuals lived with us in our home. But I felt like basketball was my ticket out. And I craved and desired, I had a desire for a man to really help me understand who I was. And so anyway, long story short, I was at the school, and it was time for us to do our session. And so I would go in twice a week, and we would do a 25-minute, 30 session, social skills, life skills. And we're in this session, and it was around the time my father had passed away. And I'm saying to these young men, I wasn't here last week because of the death of my dad, and just needed some time to process that, et cetera, et cetera. And while I was speaking, and these are middle school boys, and this one kid just kept raising his hand. And, we've talked like, hey, if someone else is up here talking, we give them respect. If you have to go to the bathroom, let's just wait until the person finishes. And he just kept pressing. So I eventually called on him. And when he stood up, he began to share of how he lost an uncle. And then he started crying, like literally crying in the classroom, in the library. And so then this other kid raised his hand, and then he began to share how he lost someone in his life. And then the next kid, and it just seemed like the domino effect of these young boys learning how to process their pain and sharing their emotions of losing someone in their lives. And what hurt my heart the most, the last kid who stood up, and he talked about how this gunman came into his home and he shot his little brother, killed his little brother. And then he started crying, and there was no dry eye in the place. All of us had become emotional. But what hurt my heart is that these young boys, some of them were talking about the deaths that they had experienced maybe a year or 2 ago, but there was some that stood up and shared that they had been carrying this pain for 4 and 5, 6 years and never had a place to really process it. never had a positive adult or a caring adult that would ask them about their pain and give them a platform to really process their pain. And so anyway, so when we talk about these internal, external assets, many of this, I'm sure you know, these internal assets tell us about the values that will affect their behavior, right? It tells us about the skills, et cetera, and things that they really care about and what they are committed to. And then these external assets tells us about the needs young people have for support from adults in their communities, about the type of activities they need to develop and the kinds of boundaries they need in their lives. I just want to share this again real quick. So since that bio came out, I actually took a position in Southeast DC, which is over 45 to 50% unemployment. And so now I'm working with an organization called the House DC, which is a teen drop-in center. And I oversee outreach, soul care, and program. And we had a young man who is homeless. He's a homeless student of ours. And just the other day, one of our employees took him in. He found out that he was homeless and decided, you know what, I cannot see this kid living on the street. He was in and out of the homeless shelters. And so he went in, and I guess he was there probably for a couple weeks or so. And then all of a sudden, this argument rose because the challenge for this kid to do the dishes. And so now this kid is back out in the street. He didn't want to obey the rules of the house, et cetera. And so now he's living again on the street. And so he and I had a conversation. And one of the things that we said is that if you never heal the father wound that's inside of you, every man that presents himself as a corrector or someone who comes into your life, you will, in what we call, buck that person because of the wounds and the pain and the deep hurt that you have experienced by way of the men who were in your life. And so these internal and external assets are so important because they show us and teach us so much. All right, so here's an opportunity for us. Let me see if okay. So just real quick, we can just use the chat. What are some internal and external assets or things that young people need? Not necessarily just the assets, but what do you think? What are some things that are working where you serve the boys in that you're a part of their lives? What are some things that, as we create kind of a running list, what are some things on the inside or things on the outside that boys need to thrive? And we used to say this all the time: survival of the fittest, only the strong survive. But I started saying thrival of the fittest, only the strong thrive, right? So how do we help them not just survive, but to thrive? So what do boys need? Let's just take a few minutes and throw some things in the chat. What do you think? What are some things that are working for you? What are some things that you believe or see that boys need? We'll take just a couple minutes. Another 30 seconds or so. And then we'll move on. Mark, can you do me a favor and just read what those are?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got safety, sense of worth, fun and play, purpose, acceptance, healthy competition, appropriate challenges, praise, nurturing touch, outdoors rough and tumble play, friends, and mental well-being.
Yes, thank you so much. All of those are great. One of the things we used to at World Vision, they drilled in us child well-being aspirations or child well-being indicators. And so the first 5 years of my time at World Vision, we were doing the direct service, mentoring, in the schools, at the community centers, et cetera, throughout our churches. It looked different around the country. And then the second half, the next 6 years, the organization decided that they want to change up their ministry model and focus more on capacity development. And so then it afforded us the opportunity to now also train organizations and other youth organizations, churches as well, community-based, on how to more effectively serve young people. And so our goal was to strengthen their capacity to come alongside young people so that these young people live life to their fullest potential, and that they lived their best lives as they, and I heard this earlier today, as they find their voice, right? How do we help young people find their voice? The Greek philosopher Plutarch says that regarding human development, that we are not vessels to be filled, but we're fires to be lit, right? So then we said we were spark champions, right? How do we come alongside? I heard was it Dr. Farrell earlier today, one of the questions that he answered, and he was talking about, the kids' ability to play the sports, or is it arts, or, what is that spark inside these kids? And then how can we come alongside our boys to ignite their sparks, and to say to them that your spark is not dumb, right? That your spark is not just an artist, a struggling artist, or, but how can we help ignite something in you that you become on fire for whatever it is, that you begin to live a purpose-filled life and live in that purpose and identity, knowing who you are, knowing exactly who you are. So, okay, thank you so much, guys. Let's move on here. This is a song. This young man actually grew up in my community, and so in this song right here, we're not going to play the whole song, just a few minutes of it. And I want to apologize for the language. It's explicit language, but I played this in New York City. I was asked to come up to the Bronx and to do a workshop on how do we help people, churches, and primarily understand this. This was pretty much a faith-based community. How do we help them understand the impact of youth culture on the young people that walk past their doors, go to the store and all the other businesses in the neighborhood? And how can we become more effective in our approach in terms of how we serve young people? And so this was one of the songs that I played. And this young man here still lives and resides in this area. His family has experienced so much violence, gun violence. I mean, they've buried so many people. And so I'm just going to play a little bit of this. And where's my cursor? All right. Let me know if you can hear it.
You ever feel like giving up? Shit. Sometimes I do. For real. Shit get real in my city. Free the gas. Please stay so free.
So I just want to stop that there. First of all, again, I apologize for the language, but I played that up there not because it's just a cool, hip thing to do, but I wanted people to understand, this is some of the pain that these young people are carrying, and especially in my context and serving the inner city and coming alongside a lot of our young men and mostly communities of color. I have been blessed the opportunity to kind of travel the country a little bit and to speak to all groups. But on a daily, I'm walking alongside these young boys, these young men who idolize in so many ways, some of our rappers and some of our hip hop artists and some of the drug dealers and those who appear to have this lifestyle that they want, this lifestyle that they desire, tired of being, poor and also looking for someone to identify, help find their identity. And so Father Greg Boyle, Homeboy Industries, always says that we're serving and come alongside people who have a lethal absence of hope. Now, if you can go look at this on YouTube, but the young men that he's describing in here are some of the young boys that I had at the middle school level right here in Washington, D.C. And so it's just sad. It breaks my heart. There are many of them that have deceased to this day. And then there's some that are in prison. In fact, one of the guy he said is a menace to the street is actually doing 42 years in prison right now. And he's probably about 4 or 5 years in. And he was sentenced a week before his 18th birthday. So just imagine, here you are, the crime was committed at 16, 2 years trial and all that. And then right before, the society and the world says that you should be a man, here we go with a 42-year sentence. So I just, any thoughts or comments, maybe you can store them in the chat. Any thoughts or comments, anything that stuck out from listening to this piece today?
Well, I just want to, this is Mark here. I just wanted to mention that phrase that you mentioned, a lethal absence of hope. That's I called it an unfortunate phrase in the chat, but it's very well said. Could you tell us a little more about that and just the importance of hope, or what happens when you don't have hope?
Yes, thank you. Hey, this is a good segue to, as I mentioned earlier, kind of now in this new role. And so part of my role as leading outreach at our teen center is we do a Thursday outreach on a particular street in Washington, D.C. And the name of the street is Good Hope Road. And a couple of weeks ago, we were out and we were, had our table set up. And I'm a firm believer of not only just serving with dignity, but also helping to restore people's dignity. And so we're setting up the table and everything. And, I called it the other day, it's a beautiful chaos, right? Because there's so many beautiful things that are happening, but sometimes it's overshadowed by the negative or the evil that's obvious to the human eye. The folks maybe using drugs or the violence or the fighting and everything else. And so right before we pulled up, I was told that there was a major fight out there, and it was between two women. And so this guy who we have begun to know, and he says, man, Ray, we call this No Hope Road. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I get it, I understand it, and we're witnessing the obvious lethal absence of what hope looks like. But I'm like, we can't give up. So we have to help provide hope. And so we say that we provide good hope on Good Hope Road. And so as a child, as a young boy growing up, and I think I put this in the chat earlier with our first speaker, growing up, I had very little hope. My dad was addicted to drugs and my uncle as well. And my mom was struggling, and, the neighborhood was just so sad and just really no motivation. And then on top of that, I had issues reading. And in high school, I was going off to what they called the Sylvan reading program. And I remember the walk of shame, as my friends were walking to other classes, and I was headed down the corridor where the special education department holds most of their classes. And that's where they decided to put the Sylvan reading. So there was some shame in my story and a lethal absence of hope. And so there were many days when I just didn't want to do anything. I wanted to give up. And I just thought that, God was punishing us. That's what I used to say. So I'm not sure, Mark, if that answered your question, but that lethal absence is really, really, it's really lethal.
Wow. That is great. No Hope Road. That's very, very sad. When you said that too, that's another thing that struck me. We have a couple of other questions and comments, and we have 18 minutes left. So do you want to go to the question and comments, or do you want to keep with your presentation?
Well, let's go to questions and comments.
All right, great. So we had comment from Jennifer Fink. So many thoughts. We as a society have created structures and systems that have led to so much pain for so many. Beautiful chaos is another good phrase. Question from Brad Leslie. He wants to know, have you met my buddy Ashanti Branch? And he was in a film called The Mask You Live In, and he has the Ever Forward Club in Oakland, California. You guys sound similar, have similar goals. It's uncanny. Keep up your good work.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that. So I just wrote that name down. So now I have to reach out, maybe find them on social media.
Great. And I know he's good friends with Warren. They've conducted workshops together too.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm in San Francisco and Ashanti's over in Oakland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Next
That's-
question. This one comes from Representative Dye. She's a state rep in the state of Washington. So the other Washington, from one Washington to the other. Why do neighborhoods like Anacostia, for example, allow the proliferation of the drug culture in those communities? Are they looking for shortcuts to wealth or power?
I think both. Thank you so much for that question, Representative. By the way, I love Seattle. And, you know, it's sad because now what we're actually seeing in that neighborhood is more gentrification. And so that particular corridor of Washington, D.C. has now, it's the slowest gradual movement of gentrification, but it's happening. It's happening. And so one of the things that we're for years, 20 years, I just celebrated 20 years in this work, August the 1st of 2022. And I told someone the other day that I'm tired of preaching at kids. Now we've got to figure out how can we help them eat? You know, how do we help them survive and not just survive, but thrive? How do we help them thrive and live in their purpose, find your spark and live your purpose-filled life? And so it's heartbreaking because, you know, I think it's one of those things with the haves and have-nots. And sometimes it seems like the more haves are getting more. And the forgotten folks seem to really be falling deeper and deeper into a hole.
Okay, thank you. One more comment and then you can continue with the presentation. Lynn just agreed with the comment, said, yes, there's a lot of shame that can happen in school and learning, which is too bad. Thanks for that comment, Lynn.
Thank you so much. In the mornings in Washington, D.C., I have a bullhorn, like a real bullhorn. And so I'm out in front of one of our subway systems. And I'm just really encouraging our young people to go to school, one, have a great day. But I always say to them, you know, perhaps you didn't hear today, go have a good day or have a good day. We're counting on you. You know, our communities and our world is improved or it gets better because of you. Like when you move into where you're supposed to be. And so I say to them every day, we need you. Your voice is valuable, but I need you to go get it. I need you to be in position so that when it's your turn to lead, and you're not the next generation, your generation right now, but what's next for you. And so that's one of the things that inspire me every single day to get out there and just encourage our young folks, and especially our boys. Sadly, two of my other boys were shot. Thank God they survived. One was shot 3 times the other day. Another one in this very same spot where I am just the other day. So it's just so sad.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So I want to just cover this real quick. I know we're running short on time, but the at-risk and high risk. An at-risk student is one that is considered to be in danger of not graduating, being promoted, or meeting other educational related goals. Study.com says that. But I like this one here. Google says youth exposed to harm and danger. And so I've heard often that, you know, we're all at risk to something, right? We're all at risk, and most kids are at risk. And there's a difference between at risk and high risk. And so one of the things, and even thank you, Representative, for that question and those comments, because one of the things that I've learned over the last few years is that there's a different in terms of approach, in terms of how we provide strategy and program and not just program, because we learned that young people don't grow up in programs, but they grow up in communities. So what does the community need to look like for our at-risk students or young men versus our high risk? You know, these are young people that if they don't have specific relevant programs, eventually we lose them to the street. And I have a student like that now. There were 2 brothers, they're twins. Both were incarcerated. One comes out and he's able to kind of find his footing. He finds a young lady, he gets her pregnant. And so now he's working 2 jobs, like he's focused. But then on the other hand, his brother, who comes out of the same environment, come out of the same situation, no dad in the picture, mom is struggling to raise 6 or 7 kids. And so now he's having a harder time. He was just released from jail, and now, you know, Friday, he's still trying to find himself. And so he would tend to be the more high risk. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, what exactly do we need other than your identification, what else do we need to do? Is it social services? Is it, is it therapy? What do we need to do so that we ensure that you become someone who's productive out here in society and you're living life to your fullest potential? All right, so because of time, I'm gonna keep going here. And so what is at risk? Destructive relationships, single parent or no parent families, abuse or neglect raised by siblings. I have a family right now. It's about 6 or 7 siblings that come to us every day from 3:30 to 7. We do snacks, of course. We do a sit down dinner every night at 6 o'clock. We have programming. We have a multimedia music studio where we're teaching young people music production, audio engineering. We're helping them build marketable skills. We have a culinary component where we're now teaching young people culinary arts. And so, but we have a family of 6, 7 siblings who are now, mom and dad passed away several years ago. And so now they're being raised by older siblings. And there's 7, 8, 9 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. Climates of futility, negative expectations, boredom, lack of responsibility. And then learned irresponsibility, sense of helplessness, rebellion of authority, negative peer subcultures. And then we have loss of purpose, sense of worthlessness, job as means to materialism, no opportunity to value or serve others. And so that's one of the things that, a lot of our young people, young boys, that especially the ones in our context, in our program, some of them want jobs, and they that's their thing. Ray, I need a job. And then when they get a job, it's the means to the materialistic things because they see other people have it. It's the shoes, it's the brands, it's the clothes, and because everybody else has it, I need the money so that I can get that. Okay, so let's see. The ability to recover quickly from setbacks. So now, as our time comes to an end. The boxer Mike Tyson, who was eventually knocked out 29-0 by Buster Douglas. And what most people don't know is that Buster Douglas's mom had a beauty salon, a hair, as my grandmother used to say, a beauty shop in New York City. And so she was telling people in there while she's doing their hair that her son was going to knock out Mike Tyson. Days before the fight, his mother actually passed away. And so you may recall the fight. He knocks Buster Douglas down. He eventually gets back up and he knocks out Mike Tyson, takes him the distance, and he wins Mike Tyson's first defeat of his career. And so I share that because so many of our young people are in this fight, right? And they're in this fight and they get hit with all kinds of things. COVID-19, I heard this earlier today. COVID-19 didn't take a backseat to some of the other ills, the social ills, the violence, the poverty, and the things that are already taking place in the lives of young people. And so here it comes again, another punch, another blow, and our young people are trying to fight. And some of them are doing it alone. Some of them now folks are coming alongside. But the idea is, how can we empower these young people, help them find their voice, their identity, their purpose, and all the other things that we mentioned earlier? But then how do we help them see the power of resiliency that's in their lives? That when they get hit down, when they get knocked down, that they also too have the ability to bounce back from those things. So I'm going to pause right there because I know our time is running out.
So we've got a little bit of time left for folks. If we have more questions and comments, we'd love to hear from people. You can raise your hand, or there's just a small group of us. If you want to speak up, let me know, or put something in the chat. What is this here? The resiliency circle. Let's look at that.
So this is the resiliency circle. When we think about, how do we help kids bounce back from certain situations? We have to have the right approach, the right attitude, right resources, right relationships, and then the right thing to do. Like, can we give our kids something to do that they're participating and as a part of the greater community? And so we're hoping that the right approach, right attitude, right resources, and the right relationships and something to do helps them to really fully embrace who they really are. All right, and so these are just the sphere of concern and sphere of influence, as I've always talked about these when I'm speaking to adults concerning young people. And these are just a few things that I thought of in terms of either a sphere of influence. This gentleman right here with the gold chains is a DC area rapper, but he's a hip hop He's a hip hop artist, Shy Glizzy, who's from one of the neighborhoods that we serve. And, you know, the music and the lyrics and all those motives behind that influence in so many ways, some of our kids' decisions. And then, you know, the makeshift morgues where, you know, there's constantly this makeshift thing because of the homicides in our neighborhood. And these are the types of things that you see on a regular basis. And so when do our kids have actually time to process? Because life says that we must move on. Life says that we've got to progress. Life says that, you know, we don't stay the same, but things continue to happen. And so up at the top there is just kind of the influence of faith. That's a Islamic community. And then you have kind of gang activity, which in most African-American communities, it's in communities of color. In DC proper, we don't typically have African-American gangs, but we call them street crews. We call them neighborhoods. So things are based upon the geographical location and where you live. And then incarceration, drugs is another one. And this one right here at the bottom with the three young ladies, I had a student at McFarland Middle School here in DC whose mom was in a same-sex relationship with a woman, and she constantly ran away from home. So this is not in any way to judge, you know, someone's lifestyle or whatever, but to say that, you know, these are things that we must consider as we're trying to encourage our young people and to see them live life to their fullest potential. Their sphere of concern, what concerns their heart? Did it really concern this girl? Does it concern our heart for this young girl who's living in this situation and continuously running away from home? What does that do for her? You know, what is this relationship doing? Does it hurt her? You know, just simple questions. And then the influence of all of this.
That's great. We do have a couple questions. We can get to those, and we're at about 5 minutes, just for the time check. The first one is from Jennifer Fink. What do you think most people get wrong about boys today? What do most people get wrong about boys?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is that when we think about boys, I think we have kind of these preconceived notions, and we have these perceptions and strategies that in so many ways might be a little outdated. I think sometimes when we think of our boys, we try to, and I have some adults like this as well, that we're trying to retrain their mind to think that, you know, what are some things, how can we sharpen our skills today to serve these boys? For instance, Jaws, the movie Jaws. Most of us are familiar with the movie Jaws, when the famous shark catcher wanted to come and catch Jaws one way and didn't realize that Jaws had gotten humongous. He was stronger, he was bigger, but really thinking through strategy in terms of what does it need to look like? What type of relationship do I need to develop? And sometimes I think the thing that we get wrong the first, and McLaughlin says that rules minus relationship equals rebellion. So I think the relational aspect and the relationship component, sometimes we get that wrong. We don't earn that. We don't earn the right to speak into some of our boys' lives. We invade their space.
Great. And then one last question. Do you have a circle of elders that you work with at your organization?
Yes. So we have some elders, you know, on our board. But then also years ago, I found out that if kids don't grow up in programs, they grow up in communities, then that I have to be intentional about the community that I try to build and put around our young people. So who needs to be in the circle? So if you think of this web of support, and we did this with like activity with a group of people in our community. And so we had a ball of string. And so I represented, for instance, I don't represent this, but I'm just using it as an example. I represent law enforcement. So law enforcement through to the teen center. And the question was, what do you need from me? And so then we began to ask that. So everybody was in this, business owners, business leaders were there. So we had someone to represent kind of all of the entities in the community. But the sole purpose was, what do our young people need to thrive? And how can I be responsible for that and build that community as we use the elders and the people and the adults in the community?
That is fantastic. It's just such a great sentiment. How have you found when you approach people in the neighborhood these business leaders and other civic leaders. What has been the response?
So sometimes it's been really slow because I sadly, a lot of folks just don't necessarily want to deal with a certain population of young people. And so it's similar to sometimes even growing up in church, you know, we want to deal with the good kids. We don't deal with the marginalized or the ones the farthest out, as we used to call them, the farthest out students. We want to deal with the good kids because they know how to act. They know how to act. And in doing so, we forget and we miss the young people who ultimately need our support and our help.
Got it. That's great information. Any last second questions? Otherwise, we're at about a minute and a half left. They at the end of this meeting, they just kick us out of the room. There's nothing we can do. So why don't we just go ahead and wrap up now so we don't get caught in the middle of a question. Thank you, Ray. That was just a great presentation. Can you give us, what's the website for your organization, the House DC?
thehousedc.org.
Okay, I'll put that in the chat for everyone. If you want to learn more about where Ray's working and the great work they're doing, and if you live in DC and want to get involved too, you can contact him through the site. There's Ray's contact information. There's his cell and his email. Any final thoughts, Ray? Thank you.
Hey, just thank you so much. I so appreciate the work that we all do together to help our young people thrive and our young boys. So thank you.
Thank you. That was Ray Nelson. And we'll see everyone back in the main room. We're going to do a wrap up, some more book giveaways. So don't go away yet. And once again, Ray, you can stop this. Oh, cool car. Yeah, I was going to say you can stop the screen share. There you go. Excellent. Thank you so much, Ray. And we'll see everyone back in the main room. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.